The sound was the first thing people noticed. Not the thud of a sneaker, nor the gentle pat-pat of bare feet on the synthetic track. It was the sharp, rhythmic thwack-thwack-thwack, the sound of carbon fibers striking rubber, a powerful, almost metallic heartbeat echoing across the stadium. This was the sound of Omar El Sayed running. Omar was 16, built lean and compact, with the quiet intensity of someone constantly performing under a spotlight. Below the knee, his legs ended in curved, dynamic J-shaped sprinting blades. They were functional works of art, the color of midnight, silent when at rest, deafening when in motion. He trained 6 days a week, often alone, the dust of the local high school track clinging to the exposed carbon. His goal wasn't just to run. It was to meet the qualifying standard for the National Paralympic trials in the 100-meter sprint. Again, El Sayed. Coach Hassan barked, his voice rough as sandpaper. You're dipping on the curve. Drive through the hips. The blades are part of you, not something you drag. Omar nodded, sweat stinging his eyes. He knew the critique was fair. Sometimes, he felt like he was fighting the very tools meant to empower him. They were incredible technology, allowing him speed few human legs could match, yet they also made him the focus of every single eye in the vicinity, a fact that was far harder to manage than the lactic acid buildup. The specter of scrutiny. The high school hallways were a minefield of whispers. Most kids avoided eye contact, offering pity or nervous deference. But Brielle and her entourage were different. Brielle was the star athlete of the able-bodied track team. Fast, popular, and possessing a sharp edge she used liberally against anyone she deemed an outlier. To Brielle, Omar's blades weren't tools of athleticism. They were a gimmick. One humid Tuesday, Omar was taking the long route to the locker room, trying to avoid the crowds, when he heard Brielle's voice, amplified by the tiled hallway. "Look, the blade runner is hobbling," she sneered, loud enough for half a dozen students to hear. She always used blade runner, not as a compliment, but as a dismissive category, a freak show. Maybe he should just stick to the long jump. Less effort. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it resonated in Omar's chest like a physical blow. He didn't turn around. He just straightened his spine, focused on the dull ache of his residual limbs where they met the sockets, and kept walking. He tried to shake it off, but later that day during his session, the words stuck to him like burrs. He kept anticipating the scrutiny, his form tightening up. He stumbled during block practice, scraping the composite edge of a blade against the track. "Doubt is a poison, Omar," Coach Hassan said, helping him up. "It slows the kinetic chain. When you step onto that track, you must be the only person in the world. Anyone else's opinion is noise." "It's hard, Coach," Omar admitted, picking gravel out of his carbon fiber. "When they look at me, they don't see Omar the sprinter. They see the blades." "Then show them the work behind the blades," Hassan replied simply. Aspen's anchor. Omar found an unexpected ally in Aspen, a competitive swimmer who treated the caustic environment of high school athletics with wry amusement. Aspen didn't ask nervous questions about his legs or offer false encouragement. She just treated him like another teenager, perpetually smelling of chlorine and sweat. He found her one afternoon sitting on the bleachers, meticulously braiding her damp hair after practice, a physics textbook open on her lap. "Brielle is such a cliché," Aspen commented without looking up. Omar stopped, surprised. "You heard that. Everyone hears Brielle," Aspen sighed, flipping a page. "She's allergic to silence and competence that isn't her own. Don't worry about her. You could probably outrun her using just your arms." Omar managed a small, genuine smile. "I don't know about that." "Yeah, you do. You just don't want to admit it. Look, Omar, she keeps trying to shrink the track down to fit her own insecurities. You can't let her define the size of your lane." Aspen's practical perspective was the counterbalance Omar desperately needed. She understood the brutal daily commitment required of elite athletes, the missed parties, the early mornings, the constant fight against gravity and time. "Why do you think she cares so much?" Omar asked. "Because you're different and you're fast," Aspen said, finally looking up, her eyes clear and direct. "She wants to compete. You aren't just a threat on the track. You're a psychological riddle she can't solve. You already overcame the hardest part of the race before the starting pistol even fired." He started running with a new mental checklist. Block out the noise. Focus on the ground. The wall. As the trials loomed just 6 weeks away, Omar intensified his training. He was hitting personal bests in practice, but he couldn't replicate the speed consistently. The psychological barrier remained. He knew the standard time he needed, 12.5 seconds, was within reach, but the pressure to perform on command felt suffocating. One brutal day, after failing 3 successive starts, Omar ripped off his running blades in frustration. The metallic click echoed in the silence of the empty track. "I can't do this, coach," he gasped, fighting back heat in his eyes. He sat down hard, leaning back on the stumps of his legs. "It's too much. The blades are heavy. I can feel every micro-adjustment, every wobble. I'm fighting against the clock, and I'm fighting against myself." Coach Hassan walked over slowly, his training shoes crunching on the cinder. He picked up one of the sleek carbon blades. "You look at these and see a machine," Hassan said, turning the blade over slowly. "They are not. They are a promise. When you run, you are not trying to be a perfect machine, Omar. You are trying to be a perfect athlete." He knelt beside Omar. "When you feel the weight, that's not the carbon. That is the doubt. Every time you push off, you are rejecting the pity, the fear, and the noise of people like Brielle. When you run, think of nothing but the physics, power, momentum, acceleration. Be the force, not the body." Omar stared at the carbon fiber. It wasn't a replacement for function. It was an amplification of spirit. He had to stop apologizing for the difference and embrace the advantage of specialized force. He spent the next 2 weeks visualizing. Not the crowd, not the finish line, but the feel of the perfect sprint. The controlled explosion from the blocks, the quick, powerful recovery of the blades, the smooth extension of his torso, the blurring momentum. The confrontation. The high school athletic assembly was mandatory. The principal was droning on about scholarships when Omar felt a familiar presence looming behind him. "You really think you're going to make the trials, Omar?" Brielle whispered, leaning in so close he could smell her expensive perfume. "The Paralympics is cute, but it's not the real deal. It's like a participation trophy for people who couldn't make the varsity team." This time, the comment didn't paralyze him. Omar didn't spin around in anger. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply said, focused on the stage, "The speed I'm running to qualify is faster than your personal best, Brielle." The silence from her was immediate and profound. Brielle had a strong PB in the 100m, but she was borderline for nationals. Omar, if he hit his qualifying time, was demonstrably faster. He turned slightly, just enough to see the shock in her eyes. "You compete against other athletes," Omar continued, his voice steady. "I compete against time, physics, and the odds that said I couldn't stand here. Your lane is wide open. My lane required engineering." He turned back around, feeling the victory not as a rush of adrenaline, but as a solid, quiet confidence. Brielle said nothing more. The trials. The National Paralympic Trials were held in a vast, modern stadium under brilliant floodlights. The air thrummed with nervous energy and the low hum of cameras. Omar sat in the warm-up area, tapping the bottom of his blades nervously. He saw athletes with different classifications, different reasons for being there, united by their absolute focus. He watched the clock tick down. Aspen had sent him a simple text, "Be the force." He was called to the line, lane 4. The camera zoomed in on his face, then panned down to the sleek, aggressive curve of the blades. He could feel the eyes of the nation on him. He felt the weight of every slight, every moment of self-doubt. He stepped into the blocks. The synthetic track felt sticky and yielding beneath the sharp grips of his feet. He adjusted the angle of the blades one last time. He saw the officials, the timer, the distant finish line. And for a fleeting moment, he saw Brielle's sneer. Gimmick. He closed his eyes. No, he wasn't defined by the blades, but the blades were defined by his will. Ready. Omar focused. His breath steadied. He pressed his knuckles into the track, his arms rigid. Set. The world narrowed to the sound of his own heart. Everything else was noise. The pistol fired. The initial explosion out of the blocks was perfect. He drove low, his arms pumping, the raw power transmitted through his core. He heard the familiar, beautiful thwack-thwack-thwack of the blades, louder, faster, more furious than ever before. He was focused solely on the ground rushing beneath the carbon. The 100 meters was a violent blur. He didn't look left or right. He just pushed, accelerated, and maintained the punishing velocity. At 50 meters, he felt his chest begin to burn, but he pushed past the pain, channeling the effort into the drive phase. Be the force. He crossed the line, leaning into the tape, the momentum carrying him forward. He slowed down gradually, running into the deceleration zone, the sound of the crowd momentarily muffled. He looked up, gasping for air. The scoreboard was already refreshing. Omar scanned the times, heart hammering against his ribs. Lane 4, Omar El Sayed, 12.38. He stopped dead. 12.38, a new personal best. He had shattered the qualifying standard. A wave of euphoria, exhaustion, and disbelief washed over him. He was going to the Paralympics. Coach Hassan was running toward him, a rare, genuine smile splitting his face. Yes, Omar. That's the work. That's the focus. As the congratulations poured in, Omar felt a change in the way the spectators were looking at him. It wasn't pity. It was awe. They saw a champion, resolution, and the road ahead. 3 days later, back at school, the atmosphere had shifted subtly but definitively. Omar was no longer just the boy with the blades. He was the local athlete who qualified for the national trials. In the hallway, he encountered Brielle. She wasn't surrounded by her entourage this time. She hesitated, then stopped. Congratulations, Omar. Her voice was low and flat, devoid of its usual caustic edge. Thank you, Brielle. She shifted her weight, studying the immaculate shine of his daily prosthetics. He saved the racing blades for the track. That time you ran, it was impressive, even if it's a different classification. Omar just nodded. He didn't need to argue with her anymore. His time spoke for itself. He had defined his own lane. The way you move, Brielle added, almost reluctantly. It's different. It's sufficient. It's physics, Omar said, remembering Coach Hassan's words. It's the only way to be faster than everyone else in the world. Brielle swallowed, then gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of respect before walking away. The noise was finally gone. Omar walked the rest of the way to the locker room, feeling lighter than he had in years. The weight wasn't on his shoulders anymore. It was in the powerful, precise curve of the carbon fiber waiting for him on the track. He knew the Olympics were still months away, requiring exponentially more sacrifice, but for the first time, he wasn't just chasing a dream. He was building a legacy, one powerful thwack at a time. The blades weren't his burden, they were his launch pad. He was an athlete, ready to fly. That will be all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Goodbye.